Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is to take these incredibly dense cybersecurity reports, the ones full of jargon, and pull out the actionable intelligence you need. And today, we are focusing on, well, one of the most powerful and subtle cyber espionage techniques we've seen in a long time.
That word subtle is absolutely key here. We're diving into how Russia-aligned hackers, a group called Star Blizzard, are managing to bypass multi-factor authentication, MFA. But, and this is the important part, they're not doing it by, cracking the system or finding some new zero day in Microsoft 365.
Okay, let's just jump right into that because this is the real insight from the reports we've pulled. The attackers aren't really exploiting a vulnerability. They're exploiting a feature. It's called the OAuth device code flow. They've twisted this legitimate tool to trick users into just handing over valid authentication tokens.
In fact,
So Microsoft's own infrastructure becomes the weapon.
it's an ingenious abuse of trust. I mean, when a threat actor can use the actual trusted login screens of a platform like Microsoft 365, your standard defenses, even most MFA setups, they just can't see it. The whole thing looks legitimate right up until the very end.
And our deep dive today is built on some really solid analysis from firms like Proofpoint, plus great coverage in places like the Hacker News and Info Security magazine. So if we connect the technical side to the bigger picture, what does this campaign really represent?
Well, it means we're looking at persistent, state-sponsored cyber operations. These are not random. They are highly focused campaigns targeting high-value institutions across the U.S. and Europe. We're talking governments, defense contractors, financial institutions. This is all about gathering intelligence for a strategic geopolitical edge.
That sets the stage perfectly. So let's start by unmasking who's actually playing in this shadow war.
The main group we're seeing here is Star Blizzard. Now, they're a well-known state-aligned actor. You might also see them called Seaborgium or Coldriver. It just depends on which security firm is doing the tracking.
And they have a very clear track record, right? This isn't their first rodeo.
Not at all. Their track record is extensive, and it shows a consistent state interest.
Right. We're talking about repeated targeting of NATO allies, senior governing officials, foreign policy think tanks. This isn't about money. This is intelligence gathering, pure and simple.
Precisely. And the target profile just underlines the incredibly high stakes. We see these attacks against institutions in defense, foreign policy, and government again and again. The goal is timely, actionable intelligence. And our sources keep pointing out that nations seen as key allies of Ukraine have been hit particularly hard.
And what's the foot in the door? It always comes back to social engineering. It's the human element. How good is the lure here?
Oh, it's highly convincing. The phishing campaigns, they often start with an email that looks like it's from a trusted source, maybe a partner government agency, a policy institute, something like that. It'll urge the victim to, urgently review a document or confirm a login to get a briefing.
And something that really jumped out at me from the reports, they're not just in email anymore. They're popping up in Microsoft Teams.
Yes.
They'll impersonate IT staff or an internal department, and that weaponizes that immediate workplace trust. I mean, if IT messages you on Teams and says, go to this link and enter this code, how many people are going to question that?
Almost no one. That authority, that urgency, it's key. And once they've tricked the user into clicking, that's when they weaponize the legitimate OAuth device code flow.
Okay, here's where it gets a little technical, but it's fascinating. Before we walk through the attack, just remind us, what is this OAuth device code flow supposed to be used for?
Right, so it's designed for convenience on devices that don't have a good keyboard. Think about logging into Netflix on your smart TV.
Okay, yeah.
Or maybe authenticating a tool on a server. The device shows you a short code, and then you use your phone or your laptop to go to a real website. You enter the code, and you're logged in. It's secure.
So Star Blizzard took that process and just used the person as the trusted device. Walk us through it step by step.
Okay, so the deception begins when the victim clicks that link in the phishing email or the Teams message. That link takes them to a malicious landing page, often protected by Cloudflare. And this page looks exactly like the Microsoft login screen. The branding, the layout, everything.
A perfect mimic, designed for total confidence.
Yes. So the user sees a prompt to enter a device code, which the fake page conveniently provides for them. And now right here, this is the critical moment, the user is then told to go enter that code on the real Microsoft login page.
Whoa, wait, hang on. So the victim is actually interacting with Microsoft's legitimate site? That's why no security warnings pop up?
Precisely. They're on Microsoft.com. They complete the login. They enter their password. They even do their MFA push notification or code.
And they think they're just securely connecting a new device.
Exactly. But because the attacker's application initiated that device code, once the login is complete, the attacker's app automatically gets a valid, long-lived authentication token.
That is just horrifying. So a company can spend all this money on a robust MFA solution, and this one little loophole just blows right past it.
It grants them full access
To everything. Emails, OneDrive, SharePoint.
everything in that user's Microsoft 365. Yeah. And they don't need the password or another MFA prompt for that entire session.
So where's the gap? Why does MFA not stop this?
Well, the MFA gap they exploit is this. MFA is great against someone stealing your password. But here, the MFA is successfully authenticating the attacker's session. The failure is usually in the default configuration, just allowing this device code flow to be used by, unverified or external applications in the first place.
And the sources show these hackers are constantly adapting. Earlier in 2025, there were reports of Russian state hackers using watering hole attacks.
Right, compromising websites their targets visit often.
And initiating this whole device code flow from there without even needing a direct email. It just shows how persistent they are.
That persistence is why we have to see this as part of a much bigger strategic campaign, which really brings us to the geopolitical context behind all this technical trickery.
So if we connect the dots, these token theft attacks aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a much larger pattern.
Absolutely. What's fascinating is how the timing of these attack waves often lines up directly with major international events. A key NATO summit or maybe elections in a targeted country. They're shifting from just disruption towards silent intelligence extraction. And token theft is perfect for that. It allows for long-term persistence. It's ideal for espionage.
We've definitely seen this before. I mean, the 2024 Microsoft breach, the one attributed to Midnight Blizzard, that's a huge piece of context here.
A stunning event. Midnight Blizzard got into Microsoft's own corporate email systems. They accessed accounts of senior leaders, not just customers, but Microsoft's own people. And they didn't stop there. They used what they found to try and get into other high-value clients. It's just a relentless pursuit of intelligence.
And it's not just U.S. targets. I remember Denmark's intelligence service attributed a couple of big cyber attacks in Europe to Russian groups.
That's right. They were targeting critical infrastructure, energy grids, transportation. They call it what it is, hybrid warfare.
And this kind of token theft through Microsoft 365, it just adds a new, more sophisticated layer to that.
It does. If you have access to a government official's email, you get strategic information you can use right alongside those infrastructure threats.
What struck me in the latest reports was the increasing sophistication. We're past simple lure emails. They're using AI now.
That's the most worrying evolution. They're using AI to craft these incredibly convincing phishing materials, even AI-generated decoy documents.
So the attachment, the bait, looks like a real classified report.
Indistinguishable for most people. This level of personalization makes it nearly impossible for an untrained eye to spot the fake.
And that sophistication is, well, it's blurring the lines. It's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between a state-sponsored actor like Star Blizzard and a regular criminal group that's just using the same tools.
It absolutely is. And that complicates attribution, which, delays the kind of unified response we need to protect these key industries.
The complexity is frustrating, but it just puts the emphasis back on strengthening your own defenses. Which I guess brings us to what organizations can actually do. So let's turn to defenses. If the technical weak point is this OAuth device code flow, what are the concrete countermeasures that Microsoft and the researchers are recommending?
Okay, the first line of defense is surgical. It's about hardening your environment against this specific abuse. Microsoft's #1 piece of advice is to use conditional access policies.
Conditional access. Think of it as a bouncer at the door for your cloud services.
That's a great way to put it. It's the central control panel for who is allowed to do what, from where, and when.
And how does that specifically fix the device code problem?
Well, it lets an administrator explicitly restrict or just block device code authentications entirely. You could say, nobody can use this flow except for these 2 developers who actually need it for their work. It just eliminates the attack surface that Star Blizzard is aiming for. If the attacker tries to start the flow, conditional access just says nope and denies it before a token can ever be generated.
Is that realistic for big companies, though, just turning off a core function? I'd imagine that could cause some chaos.
It takes careful auditing, for sure, but it's necessary. The problem is that far too many places just leave it on by default, even when 99% of their users will never need it. And beyond just restricting that flow, organizations have to upgrade their MFA. The recommendation now is for phishing-resistant MFA.
Okay, what's the difference? Standard MFA versus phishing-resistant MFA.
Standard MFA often relies on something you can trick. A code from an SMS, a push notification. An attacker can intercept those. Phishing-resistant MFA, things like hardware security keys or passkeys, use cryptography that's physically tied to your device.
So you can't just steal the code.
You can't. The authentication process validates not just the token, but the physical source device. It breaks the attacker's chain.
And all of this is part of the bigger philosophy of zero trust architecture, right?
Absolutely. You have to assume breach.
Yeah.
You verify every single access request every time, no matter where it's coming from. And a zero trust system would enforce continuous evaluation.
So how does that help if the attacker already has a valid token?
Well, even with a valid token, a zero trust system would see it as suspicious. This brand new device suddenly accessing highly sensitive data. It would flag that, and it could force a re-authentication or just block access, even if the token itself was technically valid a few moments ago.
We should probably mention the success of some of the collaborative efforts, too. There was that big takedown with Microsoft and Cloudflare.
A huge victory. They seized the domains for a phishing-as-a-service operation called Raccoon 365. That one service was behind over 5,000 credential thefts in almost 100 countries. These big takedowns are essential for disrupting the whole criminal ecosystem.
But even with all of this tech, we keep coming back to the same fundamental truth: the human vulnerability.
It's always the deciding factor. Social engineering exploits trust, and no software patch can fix that. This entire device code attack only works if a person clicks that first link and enters the code. If the user doesn't fall for that initial lure, the rest of the attack just falls apart.
So mitigation really comes down to training that actually works.
Yes. And it has to go beyond just awareness emails. Organizations need to run simulations where employees practice spotting these things. They need to be trained to be suspicious of any unsolicited device code prompt to understand what that actually is.
Which brings us to our final synthesis. This has been a really critical look at how modern espionage works and how the shadows are, well, they're lurking in the cloud platforms we use every single day.
The takeaway is pretty clear. Groups like Star Blizzard aren't trying to break down the fortress walls. They're tricking the guards into holding open a legitimate backdoor. Understanding the mechanics of device code phishing and its geopolitical context is just essential for defense now.
And the adaptability of these hackers means this cat-and-mouse game is never going to stop. Vigilance and really strict configuration, that's the foundation of defense today.
Indeed. We know that initial access so often starts with a simple, preventable mistake. A test account without MFA. That's what was reported in the 2024 Microsoft breach. One gap can compromise the whole system.
So here's a final thought for you to take away. Given that even a legitimate-looking login can be a trap, what single rule is the most crucial one to implement today? Is the priority to use conditional access and just eliminate this entire OAuth flow vulnerability? Or is it more fundamental? Is it making phishing-resistant MFA mandatory for every single account, no matter what?
That choice, eliminating the vector or hardening the user, that really determines the security philosophy of your entire organization.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.